My name is Claire Harrison. For those that I haven't met before, I'm the Managing Director at Harrison's, a Brisbane-based HR consulting firm. So thanks for joining us on our HR Bite session. Today we're going to do a quick 15 minutes on workplace investigations, which considering I normally run this as a half day or full day workshop, it is going to be very sharp. But happy to answer any questions. Post if you want to send them to me on LinkedIn or by other means. But unfortunately, we won't have time to answer questions today. So our disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, nor am I giving you any advice that is specific to your situation. So you can have a read of that disclaimer if you would like. A little about Harrison's for those that don't know us. So we've been around since 2009. We work across these areas, consulting. We work a lot with mid to large government organisations with their HR teams that basically have a need to outsource certain projects because they don't know they'll have the capacity or capability to do that. So that can be anything from workplace relations, like investigations, for example, leadership development, complaints management, employee engagement surveys, 360s, whatever that might look like. Our HR team service is pitched more at a small to medium-sized organisation where they decide to outsource their HR function to us, and we allocate a HR manager, do an audit and develop a plan. And then the bottom two, recruitment, is self-explanatory, and My HR Experts is a new site that we're relaunching, which is more around a micro business, online templates and tools. So, but the important things, so I think I said the tips, tricks and risks, so which I will try to cover in our very short time together. So I think these are some of the key points that I'd like to cover. When to act. So I think it's important to also think about when we actually need an investigation versus when we don't. So we'll talk about that. The role of the investigator, whether that's internal or external, whatever you've decided to do. And thirdly is the actual conducting of the investigations. So these are the areas that we will move through. Okay, so this is around when to act. So I think the important thing is we get a complaint come through, which happens all the time, and we need to decide, just because someone is asking for an investigation doesn't mean it warrants an investigation. So the first question is, if this was proven, would it be a breach of policy or law, which is around misconduct? So versus the issue that we commonly get that we're asked to investigate is it really more of an interpersonal dispute between two or more colleagues that could be better suited to more of a mediation type process? And that is the question that comes out. So there's an initial triage piece of looking at the complaint. It's not the investigation, it's the initial assessment of what is the best way to deal with this matter and does it warrant an investigation, because we don't want to be launching straight into an investigation when, it's time consuming, it's unwarranted, it puts people in a very stressed situation. So versus the other alternatives of that. So we look at this triage process. Potentially you do investigate or find information, you have to go into an investigation. Definitely, if it is an allegation of, for example, sexual harassment, workplace bullying, that based on the evidence you have at the time of the complaint, if that was true and substantiated, that would be workplace bullying or sexual harassment, then that definitely warrants an investigation. However, like I said, if it's a personality conflict between a manager and employee or two co-workers, then that's better suited to an informal type mediation, at least to start with. Some of the other points, is it poor performance issue that needs to be managed? So looking at, do they have role clarity? What support have they been given? Is the complaint frivolous, far-fetched, otherwise not worthy of formal consideration? And I understand we need to be really careful. We need to make note the complaint has been received. We need to be clear in terms of what we have done to action that complaint. But there will be times we look at that and think, well, no, because someone didn't wash up the dishes for me and they did for other people, if that's the only instance of what we're complaining about, then that wouldn't be workplace bullying. Therefore, it's a different type of action. Does the complaint raise concerns about cultural systemic issues within your workplace? Is there a risk to the reputation of the business? And we really need to be careful with those ones. When there's a PR risk to the organisation, there's always that, do we want to see it on the front page of the paper? How would this look based on the action that we're going to take? Is there a wider public interest of the matters that have been raised? Is it one of a series of complaints about the same person or the same type of conduct? So these are all considerations that you have to stop and think before we say, yes, we're going straight into a workplace investigation. And it's really looking at what are the allegations that have been made, the complaint. If they were substantiated and they were true, would that be some form of misconduct, such as bullying or sexual harassment? On that basis, yes, let's proceed down an investigation route. So next is the role of the investigator. So this is whether or not you're doing internal or you've outsourced investigations. The prime objective of a workplace investigation is to determine the alleged wrongdoing took place. So did the allegations, the complaint actually happen or not? The respondent has breached a company standard, policy or procedure or a law, we should say. And is it necessary to take disciplinary action in relation to an employee? Saying that, very important, an investigation is completely separate from a disciplinary process. An investigation is completely, to the last point on this slide, is completely a fact-finding mission. It is not about what's going to happen, what's the disciplinary process. That only happens after an investigation if it's warranted, and it's only warranted if some of the allegations have been substantiated. So the role of the investigator is purely fact-finding to determine if the allegations happened or did not happen. Okay, so this is where a big chunk of we could spend a lot of time talking, and like I said, we run half-day, full-day training sessions, workshops on this, so I'm not going to be able to cover these in detail. So in terms of planning for your investigation, first of all, we look at the scoping. So appointing an independent investigator, I'm talking about internal or external, but obviously if you're appointing an investigator, you want someone who's an experienced investigator and they're not a party to the matter. Secondly is what is the complaint? How have we received that complaint? Obviously, it's always good to have it in writing. If not, we're writing it up and asking someone to sign and comment and put it in writing. I'll cover the point because we always get asked is, but they told me, especially as HR people, they told me to keep it confidential when they're making the complaint. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and you have to be clear with the person making the complaint. So once they raise what is a risk to work health and safety with you, as an officer of the company and in your role, you have an obligation to do something about that. So you do need to act on that and ensure you document exactly what you've done. Allegations come out of the complaint. So complaints can, depending on where you work and different people, complaints can be, very long in terms of written documents, or you might do an interview, a meeting, and it's very long and there's a lot of things in it. There's a lot of issues that are raised, and so then it's the role of person scoping to give to the investigator, but also the investigator to get down to, okay, so what are the allegations that we're going to investigate? So there might be a lot of other behavioural things that have gone on, but if substantiated, is that misconduct, or are they part of, are they something else that needs to be addressed separately? So determining what those allegations are. Then from that, you'll have complainants, so people that have made the complaints, whether it's one or more than one. You'll have respondents, whether it's one or more than one. And then initially based on the complaint is who has, preferably in person, not third hand, witness the behaviour that we're talking about. So that helps you form your witnesses, which may change over time. You need to notify the respondent or respondents that there's been allegations and an investigation is commencing. And we do an evidence matrix. So looking at the complaint, if this complaint and these allegations were substantiated, what law or what policy or what contract are we breaching? And then we have all of the people that are party that we're going to interview as part of the investigation, from the complainants to the respondents and witnesses, and what questions do we need to ask based on that fact findings to substantiate or not. So that evidence matrix is very important from the beginning to keep you focused on the facts and what you need to substantiate or not. So highly recommend evidence matrix. So then we're gathering evidence. So that can be through the interviews, but there'll also be other evidence. So there might be emails, documents, policies. There might be, depending on what it is, you might have surveillance cameras, you might have GPS tracking, whatever that might be. So you're gathering the facts. It's all very factual based, and you're keeping really good records of that. Then the final part of an investigation is our findings. So considering each of those allegations, the evidence that's been gathered, we make our findings against each allegation, which is normally substantiated or unsubstantiated. And just remembering, for workplace investigations, we're looking at the balance of probabilities, not beyond all reasonable doubt. So we make findings, it goes into a report. There's a number of other considerations in terms of other evidence, the reliability of the witnesses and other parties, the respondent and the complainant in the investigation. There's all the legal definitions in terms of if it's bullying or harassment, whatever it is that you need to refer back to. So that is a really important piece in terms of looking at the allegations, the evidence against each of those, and what can be substantiated or not. Just because there is evidence that points to, just because it's a he said, she said thing, based on the balance of probabilities, if there's a lot of other evidence to support that most likely happened, then that can be substantiated, but that's a legal consideration that we won't go into. So this is the investigation. It's a very big process, but that's just an overview of it. So reminders in terms of workplace investigations, it's a fact-finding mission. Just remember that always. It's fact-finding, it's asking questions, open questions to get information from people, not leading questions. A good investigator has the confidence, knowledge, and skills to listen, interview, and communicate effectively. Manage, and so that's important. Like I said, it's open-ended questions. We don't want to be leading any witnesses or anyone else. So we also don't want to go on witch hunts and start talking to witnesses that were never haven't been cited as being party to anything that happened. Need to be very careful about that. Importantly, what you do need to be doing, an important point, which is not on this slide, but I will say, is the support of everyone that's involved in the investigation. So the support for the complainants or complainant and the respondents. So they all need to be given support, as do the witnesses. So hopefully you all have employee assistance programs in place, but if there's any other concerns being raised, you need to make sure that you're prompt and considerate and empathetic in terms of responding to those concerns that are raised throughout the investigation, and make some clear notes of that, because that has definitely become an issue with employers getting into problems with workplace investigations, and then later on workers' comp claims in terms of that potential lack of support or alleged lack of support. So manage the investigation so that all parties understand the process. Keep parties informed and be available to answer questions. Apply common sense and logic. Process and rapidly respond to new information, adjusting the investigation as necessary. So often what I do is we've got the initial allegations. I always will meet with the complainant or complainants first, because I'm an external investigator. So we're getting it from internal HR or whoever it might be. I want to meet with the complainant first to go through the complaint and to pull out more information. So from there, I might decide or ask to add some witnesses to that list. I might also ask for other information. Then often, as I meet with witnesses and definitely with the respondent, I should say throughout this time, sometimes what we will do too is to review the allegations, especially after I've met with the complainant. Sometimes it's a resetting of what the allegations are, but the scope of the investigation needs to be really clear, and that is what we're sticking to. So, but definitely often once we meet with the respondents is they might nominate other witnesses or other information. So it means going back sometimes and talking to the same people or some additional people or gathering other information to ensure that we've covered all of our bases. And remembering about fact finding, first person is the best form of evidence, not hearsay in terms of they've heard it from someone else. Really important. Obtain assistance if needed, evaluate conflicting evidence and judge the credibility of the people providing the evidence. And that's about consistency of their evidence normally. There's some other factors to take into account. Make judgments that might affect colleagues' professional and personal interests. So if you're an internal, often HR person doing this, then sometimes that is difficult, but you need to be able to do that as an investigator. Make findings, as I've mentioned, on the balance of probabilities. You have to understand the relevant policies, procedures, and codes of your organisation. So especially relates to privacy and surveillance laws. But I will say, when you're trying to substantiate or not allegations, you have to be looking at what your policies and what your contracts say. And as well as that, if you have a procedure or policy in your organisation about how complaints are managed, you have to comply with that. So make sure you're all over it. Be independent, unbiased, impartial, and non-judgmental. Abide by principles of natural justice and adhere to procedural fairness. As I mentioned, was talking earlier in terms of that support, it may mean you need to delay some of the interviews. Be empathetic while maintaining a professional distance. Follow the steps in the policies, as I mentioned. Treat all participants consistently and equally. No matter if you think for sure this happened or whatever it might be, you have to be impartial and you have to base your interviews and your fact finding and your report all on the evidence and facts that are available. So deal effectively with criticism and challenges. Sometimes people don't want to be there, or they'll be, respondents might be upset or aggressive about what has happened. So you need to be able to manage that yourself in terms of manage your own emotional response to that. So that's about, if you need to take time, but that's an important factor of investigations and the investigator law. Manage participants who may attempt to derail the process. So we often get with a respondent but this happened on this other day. It's like, well, that has nothing to do with this allegation. I'm happy to report that back and have a look at that later, but I need you to respond to this allegation, which says on this date, this happened, whatever. What do you say about that? Okay, so that brings us to the end, which is my 20 minutes nearly. So if you need help, we train HR and managers on conducting investigations. You can outsource your investigations, mediations, and complaints to us. If you need help developing policies, procedures, code of conduct, whatever that might look like, we can help with that. And the same goes for your complaints process and contact officers, because as probably many of you have seen, this is an increasing area of litigation when it comes to the increasing number of workers' comp claims, that you need to have done good investigations for your workplace bullying site claims, normally is how they play out, or definitely when you're looking at general protections, adverse action claims, you need to have really solid investigations that are done by trained people. So I thank you for your time. Like I said, if you've got any questions, you can post them to me on LinkedIn. But thank you for your time this morning. Bye-bye.